Hey guys, welcome back for part two of the NET session here, where we're trying to introduce neuro-emotional technique. This is a technique, I know Dr. Kathy already did a great job of kind of explaining what it is and kind of where to go with it. The part that I want to interject here, and my wife, Dr. Meg, is also going to help, is we want to show you guys a demo. And I want to show you kind of how it fits into some neuro findings as well. Something that we've been finding is people with balance issues and dizziness. We've actually had, a good amount of success in working through clearing the emotions out of the cerebellum. We know with where all the research is with the emotions and the cerebellum, that there's a huge component to how those two things work together or interact, being that the cerebellum doesn't just balance the body, it also balances and coordinates our emotions and our thought processes and all of that kind of stuff. So what we've been finding is sometimes people with balance issues, we can kind of get a really quick change in them if there is kind of an emotional component that is causing them to be off balance or be a little bit out of sync, right? So we have a demo set up. My wife, Dr. Meg, is actually going to walk through and do the demo in what we call a body entry in NET, or what they refer to as a body entry with NET. And the part of the body that we're going to go into is actually the cerebellum. So I'm going to show the testing. We pre-tested this student to see if what the issue was, and because I wanted to try to do something around balance and coordination, and she's got a bit of a balance issue on the left side. We also localized it to being associated with the cerebellum through some muscle testing and things like that. Real quick, just kind of what I think is going on with a muscle test, and this is just my thoughts around it. We use muscle testing in a lot of different techniques within chiropractic and within a lot of holistic medicine techniques. What I think is going on is we're testing the cerebellum essentially with the muscle test, and the cerebellum needs to be congruent, it needs to be smooth, it needs to be coordinated. So if we're testing a muscle and it's strong, we're not doing MRC testing, right? This isn't medical research council grade testing where I'm doing +4, or 4 or 5 or 3 against gravity. Those are different neurological testing to test the integrity of the nervous system and the neuromuscular integration, right? This is more testing the coordination of the muscle. And I think that's where we get into cerebellum. If I, like Dr. Kathy talked about doing verbal entries versus what we're going to do as a body entry. If I touch something that the cerebellum isn't really sure is functioning properly, it doesn't have the ability to coordinate two things, meaning the deltoid, as well as trying to process touching that body part. So I think that's where we have that momentary weak muscle. It's not that the muscle is weak. So if you did MRC testing, it's not like that shoulder muscle would break. It's not a break test, but it's that momentary lapse is where you get the weakness in the muscle. And when you say things and you verbalize things that you're not congruent with, that also shows that weakness in the muscle. So keep that in mind as you see the demo here of us working through it, of how it's not really like a lie detector. We're not saying that that's what it's used for, but when you're not congruent with something, or the cerebellum has to kind of think about it for a second, then it's going to have that momentary lapse in the ability to coordinate the muscle in time or in rhythm with what it is it's not congruent with. So, yeah, that's kind of how I wanted to preface this as we go, because I think, for me, when I first learned about NET, it was really touchy-feely. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going there. It's not my thing. But what I realized is through the years of doing, neuro work, there was this missing component. I was having patients that were getting phenomenal results in the office, and they were going home back into their stressful situations, and everything was unraveling. And when we added this component in with the neuro-emotional technique, we stopped having that issue, because we were removing some of the thorns and some of the triggers that they would have when they went home. And then the neuroplastic change that we created in the higher centers of the brain, above that limbic brain, we're having a lot better long-term potentiation, because there wasn't that interference from the amygdala hijacking blood and resources because it was getting overactivated or oversensitized. So for me, NET it was a game changer with a lot of this. I was working on really strengthening the frontal lobe to bash those emotions into check. And that worked really well for a lot of things and for some things, but for some of those really tough cases, this was a game changer. So that's why I'm excited to kind of show this and introduce this into this group a little bit with IAFNR. So I think it's a piece, at least the emotional component, that's been missing a lot. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Meg here is my wife. She's going to be doing the NET. And Sophie here is a student at Life University. She's the one that we were able to test and find some of the balance issue with. I will say that NET is normally a pretty private encounter between the doctor and the patient. It doesn't have to be real touchy-feely, not a lot of words usually exchanged. But we're going to, Dr. Meg's going to explain a little bit of what she's doing. And then she's going to work through the technique, and then we're going to test and retest Sophie pre and post, and see if we make some changes and see how much of a change we see in a sway pattern. But understand that she may verbalize some things loud enough for you guys to hear. Some things may be kind of quiet because they're fairly private as we work through the technique. So when we're done, we'll retest her and we'll kind of explain what I think is going on with her case and kind of where we find it, and reconvene at the end, so to speak. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Meg and to Sophie here. First, come on up and let's check balance. So what we're doing is we're looking at balance testing. And sometimes you'll have patients with dizziness. If they turn their head to the right or to the left, we can use a body entry on different parts of the vestibular system. With Sophie, what we were able to find was a bit of an issue in balance in general. So if I just do Romberg with her, eyes closed for me. You see a little bit of unsteadiness on camera, not super bad. But then if we have her, she's right-handed, so her dominant leg is the right leg. So her stance leg should be the left. So if I have you do a one-legged stand on the left, and then eyes closed, we see that she gets pretty unsteady pretty quickly. And about 7 seconds before a touchdown with that foot. So then what we can do is I can have her touch her cerebellum, and this is just us kind of localizing to the area. The cerebellum on the left because of the stance leg on the left. We have her hold strong. And then I'm going to touch her emotional points, which we'll talk about a little bit more, and hold strong. So we actually see that she goes weak when we cover the emotional points and touch, whereas she's strong without it. So what we're going to use is we're going to use the cerebellum as the entry point, because that's our indication that maybe there's an emotional component to what's going on with that area of the brain that would normally be processing or helping with the one-legged stand on that left side. So I'll let you guys go ahead, and then we'll see you guys in a minute.
All right. Okay, so we're going to start by doing NET as Dr. Mike had just checked her cerebellum, and then we covered the two emotional points, which are right above the eyes in the middle of the forehead, indicating that there's an emotional component to what's going on in her cerebellum. So now we're going to go ahead with the technique, and we'll kind of go through it, ask her questions and such, and then we can kind of follow up. I won't say too much stuff while we're going through to kind of keep her in the moment so that we can process through whatever comes up. And then when Dr. Longhair comes back after we're finished, then we can get into more details of what kind of went on during her session. So we're going to start by, I'm going to muscle test you, just hold strong for me, and then I contact the polarity point between her eyebrows to make sure that she goes into a change. So we want to make sure that we're congruent, that we can work together. So I'm going to have you go ahead and contact that cerebellum again. So just bring attention to that area. We cover again, we have an emotion there. So you can bring your hand down. Now, generally in life, there are two things, love and money. So let's check the concept of money, finances, career, everything in the material world. Okay, let's check the concept of love. Everyone you've ever loved and everyone who's ever loved you. Okay, so that weak muscle indicating that we're onto something. So we're gonna go ahead and investigate that a little deeper to find out who it is. So let's check the concept of a family member, concept of a friend, okay, concept of a male friend, concept of a female friend. All right, so let's check the concept of a close female friend. All right, so Sophie, who are some of your close female friends?
My best friend, Victoria.
Victoria? All right, so let's check the concept of Victoria. All right, so I want you to think about Victoria. Just kind of picture her in your mind. And I'm going to contact some points here on your wrist. All right, think about Victoria. Keep thinking about her. Okay, so go ahead and put her out of your mind and let's check the concept of non-thinking, non-emotive, concept of lost, vulnerable. Okay, you're vulnerable. Okay, so how can you make sense of you're feeling vulnerable when it comes to your friend? How does that in a sentence or two make sense to you?
I feel like I was in a car crash with her car. We shared the car,
Okay,
and I wouldn't say vulnerable. I feel bad for it.
that the car got,
Yeah. I don't know vulnerable really.
okay. Well, let's see if it had to do with her car. So let's check that concept of you feeling vulnerable in relation to her car and this accident that you got into. Okay, so not saying that that's not true, that just not in this particular NEC. So where else might you feel vulnerable when it comes to her?
I don't know. Maybe that she would get mad and therefore not wanting to be friends anymore.
Okay, so that concept that she would get upset with you, that she may not want to be friends with you, that vulnerable feeling around. Okay, so yeah, that vulnerable feeling that she may be upset with you over something, that if it was this accident or something else, but that she may not want to be friends with you anymore. What's the hardest part about that for you?
She's my closest friend. We live together and we do everything together. I don't want to lose her.
Yeah. Okay. So that concept, you wouldn't want to lose this person who's very close to you, that you're around and you spend time with. Great. So that's kind of what the situation is. How does that affect you though? That thought of something did, if we were close, she's very close to me, this means a lot. What would be that hardest part? Why would that bother you if you guys weren't able, if that changed, if you guys weren't friends anymore, if you lost that?
Yeah. I think I would feel very alone and somewhat helpless in some situations, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so that concept of that helpless feeling without her, that concept of feeling alone without her. Okay, so that concept of this vulnerable because of feeling alone, you've lost somebody or it's that alone feeling. Okay, so this concept of an original event where there was this vulnerable feeling because of being alone. Okay, so let's check and see when that was and that started. So that concept of the original event when you were conception to birth. Birth to 10 to 20, 10 to 15. Okay, so let's check the concept of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 13. All right, so 13 years old. Where were you and what were you doing?
I was in school in Germany.
Okay.
I can't think of anything specific happening, I think. Yeah, I was just in school.
Okay, anything you can think of? Do you remember where you were living? Like family, anything that might have been going on around that time?
My parents got separated a year later, so maybe like the beginning of the conflict there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the only thing I can think of.
Okay, well, let's test to see if it has something to do with your parents. So let's check that concept of age 13 and parents were around that time getting separated, kind of distancing from each other. So that concept around that time. Okay, do you remember anything specific? Does anything pop into your mind, a memory of this whole process kind of starting or knowing that something maybe wasn't good between them?
Yeah.
A conversation or something that might have been going on.
Yeah.
Can you get a picture in your mind, like a Polaroid picture in time of that event when that's kind of going on?
Sure.
Okay, see that picture in your mind. Good. Keep thinking about that. Contact the meridian again that we started with. Good. I want you to take one finger right there, hand over your forehead, and let's bring your elbows down to your knees. I want you to close your eyes and let time collapse around you. Go back to that 13-year-old. yourself see that picture. Let yourself connect to that vulnerable feeling. Changes that are going on with your parents. Let yourself breathe into those feelings. Take deep breaths. That picture is hard to focus on. Feel that energy kind of change, that emotion change. You can sit back up, take as much time as you need. All right, so let's go back to that picture in 13. See that picture? Good. Let's turn your head over your left shoulder and we're going to check for the concept of additional emotions. All right, bring your eyes back. We're going to put 2 fingers in your eyes here. We're going to test for homeopathy at the bladder 1 points in the corners of the eyes. And I'm going to check by touching the same meridian she just processed with. Good. And then over the emotional points to check any ear 911. And I believe we may have that over here. Go ahead and use that one. We do 9 to 12 sprays to help support the nervous system for the different emotions that she would have processed for, and we test them by contacting those meridian points on her. So let's go ahead and we'll test back. Check that one. Good. All right. So now we're going to go back to the original where we started. You're going to contact your cerebellum on that last slide. Strong. Good. And now she's testing that both are strong, whereas when she started, one was weak, one was strong, indicating that there was an emotional component to it. So now, Dr. Longier will come back.
All right, so now we're going to retest that same thing that we tested before with the one-legged stand. So for me, this is where this stuff kind of makes sense and it's kind of fun. If you know, not to belabor the point of what she was processing, but she was processing a time when maybe life didn't feel all that stable. So now she's lost stability, right? So it's fun when you kind of see these things hit a one-to-one combination. So kind of shake it out a little bit. Yeah, almost walk it out a bit. So we'll start the same way that we did before. Eyes closed for Romberg. Good. Already settling out a little bit better there too, even with both feet. One leg up. Eyes closed. So we doubled the amount of time she was able to do a one-legged stand just in working through that. And what I found, if we let her process this for the next 30 or 45 minutes, and then we retest her again, she'll be even more stable with that and probably a very limited sway. So it's a quick way to kind of get into the nervous system and work through some of the emotional things and remove some of those triggers. So now that we've done this, and what is really cool with the research they've done with NET is the one that they've published is it shows a change in blood flow and activation of the limbic brain, or the amygdala specifically, when they have these little NECs or these issues. When you remove it, what they found in the second paper that they'll publish soon is where the blood flow went after it didn't light up the amygdala anymore when they talked about the problem. It actually went into areas like the cerebellum and the prefrontal cortex. So, you know, working through removing these triggers helps to activate the cerebellum and those areas, and then we can do some balance work around that to even further improve the neuroplastic change in that part of the brain. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this demonstration. If you want to learn more about this, you can go to netmindbody.com, netmindbody.com. And the other thing that I love about that is with NET, just like our group here in IAFNR, it's very multidisciplinary. You know, sometimes I get a little, you know, burned out with going to a group and it's all chiros and it's a kind of a chiro rah rah rah, and those are great, don't get me wrong, I love those groups too, but it's nice to see other types of practitioners practicing the same things that we're doing and seeing things in the same way. So that was one of the things that turned me onto that group too, was that you're in the room with a bunch of neuropsychologists or licensed family therapists or acupuncturists or physical therapists, and everybody kind of thinking the same way, working through the same stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I know Dr. Kathy shared her contact information as well, or check out the website. It's another way we can make changes in the brain, especially with where we're at with all the emotional things that everybody's processing through on a pretty regular right now. I think it's hugely important that we take care of the limbic brain with people. For a long time, I just kept strengthening frontal and other areas and thinking that I would be able to dampen that limbic response. This just took us that much faster, or that much farther, that much faster with incorporating some of these techniques. So if you need anything, feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the conference.